welcome back to the DreamStream. I'm Paul Sheldon, the founder of Dreamosophy, and this is day 5 of the art of fundraising. Thank you for making it this far. And today we're going to really have a bonus day. We're going to have a developmental quiz about, okay, so raising money is part of something, but part of what? We're realizing dreams for the future. And the process of realizing a creative dream for the future, I call dream streaming, allowing the flow of your dreams for the future to establish confluence with the circumstances and the events that are occurring in waking life, in real life, in the situations that you find yourself in. So before we dive into that, what's happening? How has this process impacted you so far? Questions, comments?
Well, it was fun for me because I was at Options when it started. 4 staff, no money. Davida used to pay the payroll. And Martin Sheen was her good friend. So she called him and he bought a house. And then she and Father Bill O'Donnell took their retirement to buy another one. I mean, it was insane. I was a volunteer because I hoped they'd pay somebody someday. But, to realize that when you're committed to something, that there's a way that things happen that's so miraculous and unheard of that it's unimaginable. So I was just really present to that, Paul. And, when I started doing that work, I never took a penny again. I'd been a physical therapist, but when I started doing homeless work, I volunteered from then on. And, I spent tons of money training. And
Training yourself.
Well, I became a drug and alcohol counselor, marriage and family therapist. I paid for parking. I bought all the materials. And in my personal life, my husband's a CFO, it hasn't impacted anything. And
all that money you invested.
It just like things work in ways that are unbelievable. And I had a young cousin call. He had a terrible addiction. He would have died. And he called me to ask me about that. If he stepped away from making what he'd made, which he had to because he'd had a physical accident, what was in it? And I was able to say, I don't know how things work, but they work. I don't know how, but I love that. Don't panic. That would be number 1. Don't panic.
That's a good place
Just
to
keep
start.
going.
Well, yeah, that was the answer to the question. How do you keep going? Don't panic.
Yeah, don't.
If you panic, you fall over, and then you can't help anybody, including yourself.
Yeah. So anyway, I was so present to all those years, and we were always cutting the staff, and my church gave them $10,000. I mean, it was just desperate. And yet the work didn't miss a beat. There was a time when we didn't pay anybody. So, we'll train these people and they'll go somewhere else. And but there's something in a group of people committed to something with all their heart that somehow it all works in crazy ways. But I've never been accountable for the money. I married my husband because of that. So for you guys, it's just like, but
men are good for a few things.
But money works around me. You know what I'm saying? And I've never, although at the fundraiser at church, I did get to ask people to stand up and declare money. It was kind of fun. You give 2,000, 1,000, 100, 500. That was kind of fun.
That's my favorite moment in a benefit auction.
Fun to
when
meet.
The auctioneer says, okay, I know there's some people out there who really want to give to this cause. This is a really worthwhile cause. So who have I got out there that's just going to give $1,000? How about 500? And then they just hold their paddles up, and it's like, enough with the illusion of value. Let's do what's really supposed to be happening here.
Anyway, so that's my only experience. Otherwise, I let everybody else handle money, and and they're good at it. I've watched Options. Their budget is huge now. So I don't understand that. You do, I would say, Paul, because this has been your life forever. But I can tell you an experience of my life. It's
Well,
extraordinary. It's
completely.
miraculous.
And two of my favorite clients over the years have been the tree people about whom I've spoken so much, and Planting Justice in Oakland. And it's kind of interesting to me that both of those organizations started out in the founders' bedrooms. That was their first office, was they had a desk in their bedroom. And you know, the big leap was getting out of the founder's house. And as I shared with you privately, Peg, I admire greatly Dan Pacholke, who recently retired as the Secretary of Corrections for the state of Washington. And they had implemented composting and gardening systems in all the prisons in Washington. A number of departments have done that very quietly without much fanfare. But I asked Dan how he developed these elaborate composting systems, because some of the prisons in Washington are regional composting systems. They have these huge stainless steel tanks the size of a semi truck, and people from all over the region bring leaves and yard trimmings and any kind of compostable waste to the prisons to be composted. And then I saw the very first one that they started at Stafford Creek, which is just, you know, like a bunch of railroad ties with a pile of compost in them. And I said, Dan, how did you get this going? He said, oh, we're way beyond doing more with less. We do everything with nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
So
you know, inside a
hard.
prison system, that's kind of inspiring, because everybody thinks of prisons as this public dole. The prisons get everything they want. Well, actually, no, they don't. And there's some very creative, innovative people within prison systems, like this line officer in Texas, Mac McClown, who, and I think he pronounces his name Macleon so that people don't call him McClown. But he got this idea to do a salad challenge, to challenge all the prisons in Texas to serve one salad a week to everyone in the facility that was grown on site. And it's going like, well, I would say like wildfire, but it's more like wildflowers, you know. The prisons are taking it on. And or the line officer in Indiana who saw a piece on PBS about recycling and said, maybe we could do that here at the prison. And he asked the warden if it would be okay, and the warden said, how much does it cost? And he said, well, it would be the cost of 3 colored trash cans in each of the dorms for our 1,200 residents. And so the warden said, talk to the procurement officer, and they got 3 colored trash cans for cardboard, aluminum, and plastic bottles. The first year that they implemented that, they saved $140,000 in trash hauling fees. It cost them nothing. And then somebody said to them, you know, you could sell this stuff. And they said, huh? So somebody donated an old baler for baling the cardboard and the crushed aluminum cans and the plastic bottles, and they started selling all their recyclables. The second year, they developed an income stream of $120,000. So that was a $260,000 swing in 2 years, which in a prison environment is salaries. And that got the attention of the Secretary of Corrections, who shared that he actually changed the light bulbs in his house at the time from incandescents to CFLs, but now they're all using LEDs. And so it's just really interesting to see how a new idea gets started. And it often starts really small. It starts with a few people who have this felt sense, this intuitive feeling that there's something worth doing here. And I don't quite know what it is yet. And that's why we call it confluent intuition, because there's this intuitive sense of there's a dream emerging here, and I'm resonating with that process. And Ron Nazer, the former provost of Presidio Graduate School out in San Francisco, used to say, it's the one thing that you can't not do. The thing that's prompting you. Lynn Stewart from Motivation Management Service used to call it the rake. You know, when you step on a rake that's tines up, the handle of the rake goes whang up in your face.
Yeah.
So every time you turn around, you know, for me, when I was starting Dreamosophy and we'd chosen the owl as our logo, there were owls everywhere. Now everybody says it's the red car effect, but I'm sitting on a bus bench in St. Louis trying to figure out a way forward and trying to dream up a sense of possibility. And literally a bus drives by with the Dreamosophy owl 3 feet high on the side of the bus. This very owl, not just a random owl, but this owl. And so when we get started and we have that felt sense, then we can engage the creative imagination. And that's really fulfilling and satisfying, to be imagining possibility and the limitless potential. But at some point, we have to declare our intention. What are we actually going to do here?
Well, that's what I could hear in Mark. Mark,
Yes.
I want that on my table.
Well, give me the address. It'll be there.
Okay, I'm going to send it because those are my favorite things.
Yeah, well, I was a chef for almost all my life, and I've been using those 4 ingredients all the time. And several years ago, I declared that I was going to put that product out, and my son was 10 years younger, and he's been helping me with it. He actually did the label, which is a wonderful label, and we've already got it on the stores. We have it at the Grand Canyon, at the store at the Grand Canyon when you come in on the South Rim.
So
Well,
we're
you know
right
what?
over there.
I'm going to
What's
give
that?
it to everybody for Christmas. So anyway, you got to get in touch with me. I'm getting all
Thank
my
you.
Christmas shopping done here.
All right, well, get it while you're at it. Order a calendar for my nonprofit. That's the
Well, you
2024.
could,
It's the 2024 Four Seasons calendar of the Grand Canyon. I've got beautiful photographs from the Grand Canyon for 2 years.
well, here, I'm going to
Helps
give
my
you,
foundation.
I'm going to give you everything. My address, my
Okay,
email, give me all you got.
gotcha.
Because you know I can hear it. See, I can hear. So
Yeah.
Amy, I want to hear from Amy because you know I want her to do shirts. I always do shirts for Christmas for everybody, but I may be too small in order, Amy.
Hi.
Am I too small in order?
Well, that depends.
No, it's only 27 people. It's not that big a
That's
family.
oh yeah, that's perfect. I've been toying with a 12 item minimum. 24 is great. So we can do, yeah.
Yeah, I want to create
I like
something
small.
different. Every year I do the same thing, you know. I take a picture and put it on but I'd like to do something more creative. You sound creative. So anyway, if you could just put in your contact so I can
Okay.
show up at your shop.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you, Paul. You're handling all my Christmas.
Lovely. And when you put links in the chat, and Peg, I hope you'll put options in there also.
Oh.
Be sure to include https:// triple
Well, all
W.
I know to do, I'm not high tech. What I can tell you is you just go to Options Recovery Services, plug it in, and it'll do a search because they've got an issue right now. They know they have to have a .org, but they're in between. But if you go Options Recovery Services, plug it in, it'll come up to their website.
Okay.
And that
sounds
will
good.
change, but that's the
Okay.
easiest way.
All right. We'll
Got
find it.
Yeah.
And anybody else, just a Zoom idiosyncrasy. If you're putting links in the chat, you have to include the https://. Then it will appear in the chat as a live link, because Zoom often does not allow you to cut and paste out of the chat. You have to click
Yeah.
on it, and then
You'll
can
just have to do a search. I just gave it to somebody yesterday because they wanted to contact them. And I go to the staff meetings, so I know what's happening. I know they're in the middle of something, but you can still reach it this way.
Awesome. And I wanted to say just one more thing about this 7 C's this morning, and that's that careful intention part.
Ooh, that's
When we
important.
get to the creative imagination,
I
at
wanted
some
to-
point we declare what our careful intentions are, and it's important to be as specific as you can. But there's a difference among careful intentions, aspirations, and the whole goal setting milieu. Smart goals are really important. Specific, measurable, actionable. I like reasonable for the R, but lots of people have different R's, and time bound, you know, who, what, when, where, why, how is an important part of goal setting and setting objectives with action steps and target dates. It's really important. But at this point, we're not doing that really. We're doing it's SPOG. Thanks, but we're not changing the name. Our intention is SPOG. You decide, we make screen printed items. That's our focus.
Mhm.
For me, it's creative dreaming.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested, frankly, in helping people dissipate their energy by talking about their dreams, their sleeping dreams. Oh, I had the weirdest dream last night. Maybe you can tell me what it means. Yeah, I could, and it costs $250 an hour. What I'm interested in is the creative process. What are you dreaming up for a future worth giving? And that's just me. Other people
Yeah.
would love to listen to your sleeping dreams all day long, and that's fine too. But Cliff Bar, which is another one of my favorite clients, gave up on goal setting. Not that they stopped setting goals, but they took their company goals off the wall. And what they have not, and I think it's fair to say that Cliff Bar is a company that's off the wall, but what they have on their wall is their aspirations. Because as a company that was started to support mountain bikers and climbers and outdoor athletes, they aspire to a vision of what's possible. And it's okay to fall short of your aspirations. In fact, it's expected. Paul J. Meyer used to say, if you're achieving all your goals aren't big enough. And so that process of having a careful intention about this is what we're going to accomplish, sometimes you don't know how. That's just, you declare the intention. It's that sky hook again. And then you say, okay, we don't know how we're going to get to the moon, but what do we know? What's it's going to require? Well, it's going to require rockets, and it's going to require spacesuits, and it's going to require a launching pad. And we know some of the things about what it's going to take to accomplish those aspirations. And then we can be in action. Then you can give conscious attention to what you're doing, develop concerted action with other people, and move on into calm reflection and consistent gratitude. But it starts with confluent intuition, that felt sense. Nikola Tesla envisioned the AC generator. He literally could see it in the air. And his vision was so precise that he could describe it to a machinist and tell them exactly what to make, and they would do it. But nobody else could see it. Everybody else thought DC current was the only way to supply electricity. Lots of drama and intrigue and controversiality there that we won't get into today, but the process of confluent intuition matters, and it leads to that careful intention. And the calm reflection part is important also, because sometimes we get all the way around to concerted action and some things are not working. And so getting insight matters, and it requires stepping back. So, for example, the sewing machine needle was invented because using a traditional needle with the eye of the needle on the rear end, pulling the thread through the fabric as it pushed through, didn't work on a machine. And it required the inventor of the sewing machine, Elias Howe, to have a dream of Zulu tribesmen jumping up and down holding spears, and the heads of the spears had a hole in the head of the spear. And he saw that and went, oh my gosh, if we put the thread on the leading edge of the needle, it'll work for a sewing machine. So those moments of calm reflection let you go back then to the confluent intuition and the creative imagination and the careful intention, and do what Ray Anderson called mid-course correction. So I just wanted to comment on that out of our earlier discussion.
Yeah, Emerald calls it reseasoning.
Reseasoning, yes, that's lovely.
You
Okay,
season and then you reseason.
indeed. The links are up on LinkedIn if you missed any of the sessions, or if you just want to enjoy what you said again. There's a video on YouTube, on Google Drive. The audio is up on LinkedIn, in the LinkedIn group. And once again, if you need other access, you're not in the LinkedIn group, or you don't like LinkedIn, that's fine. Let me know and I can send these links to you directly. And your homework last night, adapt the letter. Mark did a wonderful version of that. I think I have it up and can share it. Let me just make sure.
And of course, this was adapted according to the person I was speaking with. So that's what I love about what you've given us, Paul, is that you can modify. There's plenty of room for that. It's just you've given us the guidelines that we need in an order that makes sense.
And that's exactly what I wanted to comment on, was the way that you did it was your own.
Mhm.
And I can hear my marketing consultants in the background going, too wordy, too long, too much information. But you have a relationship with this woman.
That's
And
correct.
so
And we're both
you know
old school,
what
and we
she-
both
Yeah.
we both share a lot. So that's a different thing. You do have to be careful what you say, and I think less is more is usually the rule, but it depends on the subject. And plus, we haven't connected for quite a while, so.
Yeah. So you had what, to someone who doesn't know your relationship with her, would seem a long letter for an email. And
Mhm.
yet the way that you did it was tailored to your relationship with her. You were answering other questions, providing information that she had asked for, and yet you had all the component parts in there. So I know most of you probably can't read this on your screen, but it's up in the LinkedIn group. And it's a wonderful example of adapting the approach letter to your own purposes. So I recommend taking a moment. Peg, Amy, any progress in that area?
Well,
Welcome to the hot seat.
I don't do letters. I just enrolled someone in Options does these bags. So I just talked to my friend to get donations. I get donations so I can take this big thing. I'm in the process of so altering. I retired at 76 from the active, real, all the time work. So I'm listening right now for where I fit in. So, I just did that enrollment and I talked to the priest. So in my life, things kind of just show up for me to handle.
And as a fundraiser, you get to a point where everybody knows who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, was it Chips or Friends that had the theme song that said, sometimes you need to go somewhere where everybody knows your name?
Friends, yeah.
Friends, thank you.
I mean, even the priest called yesterday. She said, what is it about these toiletries? I said, oh, don't put them in bags. They just want them in a box. So this is where I am in my life. Things are showing up. I go meet with those men out of prison. I just kind of dabble, you guys. So it's been so good to be with you who have a real vision that you're in action, that I'm in another place and just let myself be there.
Yes, you're
holding. And I'm inspired by you're at a different stage than I am.
And that's what elders can do.
So you're just inspiring me and handling all my Christmas. I'm so excited.
That's great. Well, and some, you get to a point in fundraising, everybody who knows me or knows of me knows that I'm a fundraising consultant. Now, they think that means I'm a hired gun and I'm just going to ask everybody for money, which is sometimes true. There's much more to it than that. But when I heard a friend of mine, an old friend with whom I've been friends for like 60 years, lost his wife this year. And the community of friends was devastated. And I heard, and he had invited hundreds of us to a dance party to celebrate her life. And I heard that he was paying for it himself. And I'm like, no, Billy, you're not paying for this. It's going to cost $3,000. It's not that big a deal. So I just started calling people. And I said, I heard that Billy's paying for the party. We can't allow that to happen. I'm putting in $500. Will you match me? And I had 5 friends in a couple of hours of phone calls. and we covered it. I didn't do an approach letter saying I'd like to ask for your advice. I just said, I'm putting in $500. Will you? And some people only put in 100 or 25, and a couple of people put in 1,000. I mean, we raised, plenty of money in a very short period of time. So it's not always required to do a discovery assessment process in order to get money when you know who you're going to get it from and you're the chairperson. Where the discovery process that we call the 7 questions comes into value is when you've taken on something that's bigger than you can accomplish yourself, when you need other leadership, other people to come together and give or get 50 to 70 or 80% of the money. Those top 2 or 3 people are going to do that. The Oregon Shakespeare Festival just announced today that they've received $5 million in pledges from 3 people. And those are the people you're looking for. Whatever the zeros are on the left side of the decimal point, it doesn't matter. The pattern is almost always there, that 60 to 80% of the money comes from the top 3 sources. They may not be the people who give it. They may be the people who get it. They may be the people who know who to get it from or how to do it. But that's often the case. There are exceptions. Crowdfunding has changed all that. Barack Obama, hundreds of thousands of contributions below $20. It can happen. Crowdfunding does happen. It requires a viral video. It's less than 1% of the campaign's work, but it can happen. Meanwhile, it's a lot more efficient and economical to identify your top leadership. And that's what the 7 questions are designed to accomplish. Now, beyond the 7 questions, and let me just spend a little longer on that before I get into going beyond the 7 questions. But the 7 questions get you started in identifying who's your leadership. Who are the people who care? One of my favorite donors in Boulder got mad at me once because we organized what I had designed as a cultivation party. It was a keynote speaker and hors d'oeuvres in a beautiful house overlooking the valley. And we brought together not that many, 40 or 50 people who were all inspired, and they loved the mission of natural capitalism solutions. And we thanked them very much and took their contact information and bid them farewell. And this donor called me up the next day and said, "Where was the pitch?" I said, "Well, there was no pitch. It wasn't designed as a pitch event. We didn't want to put people on the spot. Most of the people in the room had never heard of natural capitalism solutions. We just wanted them to find out about it." He said, "No, don't ever do that to me again. If you're going to bring me to an event, ask me for money." So that was his preference. And so it's fine to just jump to requesting money if you want. And by the way, for me, ask is not a noun. Ask is a verb. There's no such thing as the ask. I'm old, and I remember that fundraising used to be 2 words. But making the ask is just jargon. Request, ask for money. Don't make an ask. Anyway, that's just a personal idiosyncrasy. Let's assume you get all this in place. Today is our bonus day. So you have your chairperson, you have your committee, you know the people who are going to be raising money on your behalf. Let's talk a little bit about what it takes to have an organization or a project that gets you all the way to the completion of the realization of the dream. Having the money is part of it, but it's not all of it. And Amy's seen this before, and anybody who's seen my book, The Wisdom of Dreaming, has seen it in the back of the book. But this is the going beyond not asking for money and getting to, what do we need to realize this dream? We need an organization. Do we need staff? Do we need a committee? Do we need bylaws? Are we a for-profit organization? Are we a not-for-profit organization? Are we a co-op? Are we just an association of friends who decided not to incorporate? That one's been fun. Our local folklife community in Ashland. I have led the conversation to avoid incorporating. We have an interesting anomaly at the Ashland Folk Dancers, which has been dancing for 50 years. We have a bank account with Wells Fargo Bank for Ashland Folk Dancers, and there's no EIN associated with it. There's no social security number. Ashland Folk Dancers is entirely imaginary. We're a group of people in a bank account. So you can pick any form that you want, but once you start to move forward, there are 3 conversations that are what I call non-discretionary. They're conversations that if you don't have the conversation, they will come up anyway. And in many cases, those missing conversations will come up like a problem, because all of these conversations produce a set of agreements that can allow people to make full commitments to what you're doing. Are you paying volunteers or not? If people get paid, are they employees or independent contractors? All these organizational things. So these basic agreements that come out of these conversations produce the basis for coordination and for standards in your DreamStream. And I use the word DreamStream fairly often, and feel free to stop me and ask questions if it's not making sense for you. But it's in Dreamosophy, we use DreamStream in place of team for various reasons, in part because I don't think life is a game, and I don't think there should be winners and losers. But also because I think team is overused. And so we developed this unique set of metaphors that have to do with the flow of water, just as our unique metaphors to be specific. And we talked at the beginning on the first day about the fundamental shift. This is one of the things that facilitates having a shift. If you have a little bit of jargon that's different from the way everybody else talks, then you get to define what it means when you use those words. And I recommend it. So effective dream streams coordinate around committed agreements for 3 questions. What's the dream? Who am I? And how am I feeling? What's the dream is the first and biggest conversation. In fundraising, this is what we talked about the other day as the case statement. This is, what are you raising money for? And so it's based on shared dreams, visions, aspiration. This is the mission, vision, values conversation. And you can unpack it in various ways. Boards like to go on retreats, and founding groups and staff do an offsite, and they go and explore this mission, vision, values, strategy, planning conversation. What are you dreaming of? Where are you going? What do you really care about? It's an important basis for asking for money. And what standards do you use for flowing together towards your shared dreams? So I'm going to post a link in the LinkedIn group today that has these questions as a quiz that you can just go through and answer. And if you don't know yet, you say, we don't have this yet. We have a felt sense. We're in confluent intuition about this, but we'll get to it eventually. But for example, you can ask, does every contributor, and by contributor here, I mean people who are participating in a positive way, they're contributing to the realization of the dream. It's not necessarily a financial contributor, but sometimes I use the word tributary. If you have a flow of a dream stream, there are tributaries who are contributing flow to that realization of the dream, as opposed to diversions that take you away from the realization of the dream. So does every contributor own the shared dream stream mission and promises together? That means that everybody accepts the dream stream's promise as their own. What are you promising to people with the realization of this dream? You're promising to have spice on the table. You're promising to have logos on items. You're promising to have a maker space. What's your promise to your beneficiaries? And is every contributor making honest assessments and declaring diversions to be addressed as needed? One of the co-founders of Planting Justice, Andrew Chaker-Sharor, is a marvelous dissenter. He will stop a meeting and say, I'm not feeling good about this. I need to talk about this right now. Sometimes that's a contribution. Sometimes it's a diversion. But he has a sense of integrity where he declares diversions. And that's a really important part of a dream stream is to recognize that some diversions are disruptive innovations. Somebody says, hey, wait a minute, printing photographs on paper is obsolete. We should really be investing in digital photography. And Eastman Kodak says, nope, we do print photos. That's what we do. And then 10 years later, they aren't around because they didn't listen to the diversion that was a disruptive innovation. Have you established standards of assessment? Does everybody know how you measure your progress towards the realization of the dream? And this is a big conversation. You have to develop or adopt shared standards. For example, do you use Robert's Rules of Order for your meetings? Or do you use sociocracy? Are you aspiring to consent or consensus, not majority rule? These are standards, because if you don't have standards, differing behavior, miscoordination, turbulence in the flow of the dream stream, unresolved disagreement, gossip, backbiting, all those things happen in the background because you're missing the conversation about standards. Showing up on time, is that your standard or not? If people don't have to show up on time, that tells everybody something. If they're expected to show up on time, that also tells everybody something. And you get to hold people to account for your shared standard. Have you established procedures and schedules for planning? Like, do you have time set aside? This is our planning meeting. The California Folk Dance Federation has their planning meeting at their festivals. So they have a festival and people are there to dance, but for 2 hours in the morning, they have their business meeting and they do all their strategic planning then. And they're open meetings, anybody can come, but that's when they decide what they're going to do for the future. And what are the procedures and practices that you have to ensure effective plannings? Are you an autocracy? I'm the founder. I'm the one who, I make the decisions here. That's a very efficient model. Benevolent dictatorship is the most effective form of governance. But if you go beyond that and you want to have a more egalitarian process, then it's important to have procedures and practices in place to ensure effective planning so that it's not just good ideas everywhere and nothing ever happens to them. And what are your procedures and practices for effective learning that include everyone involved in the realization of your shared dreams for the future? Do you have clients involved? Do you have staff people involved? Do you have a board? Who's involved in these conversations is critical. And innovation happens through adoption in a community of practice. It's not just talk, it's not just good ideas. Now, when you adopt a practice, there's the possibility of carrying it forward into the future. And it's different from invention, because Ralph Waldo Emerson was wrong. He said, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. That's not how it happens. Once in a while, but almost always, some enthusiast has to go sell it, has to go broadcast, has to get excited. This notion that your idea is going to go viral is not something that you can bet the rent money on or bet your staff salaries on. And so there's a difference between invention and innovation. Innovation may not be your idea. You may not be the first person to try it. You may just have a tweak on it that makes it work for you and takes it to scale. But having procedures and practices for effective innovation, to welcome dissent, to welcome diversions at an appropriate time in a positive, supportive, and harmonious way, can make the difference between survival and failure, because it leads to mid-course correction when you need it. How do you encourage and support those diverse points of view and identities that lead to disruptive, beneficial innovations? Do you encourage people to speak up? Do you bring in people that you disagree with? Do you bring in people you don't like and find their skills and abilities and find ways for them to share? Have you cultivated a culture of skepticism where it's okay to question authority? And I've been very concerned recently about the emerging culture of anti-intellectualism, an anti-science consensus among people who value lived experience and intuitive knowledge or experiential knowledge over book learning or science or skepticism. Oftentimes, you see this dichotomy, not always, with people of faith who just want to do it because they know it's right. Tremendous problems with that. One of my least favorite examples is conversion therapy.
Oh,
Which if you ask the proponents of it 20, 30 years ago, they would tell you that God told them and it's right. And tens of thousands of people were damaged irreparably by being put through this process that everybody knew was right. Everybody knew it was possible to just give up being gay and go back to being straight. Without skepticism, without a climate in which you can support diverse points of view, without allowing disruptive, beneficial innovations, we can get down a rabbit hole that becomes the final solution in the worst possible case. That becomes the Milgram effect that led to Abu Ghraib, where people just don't question what's happening. And all of a sudden you look back and realize, oh my God, look what we did. Oh no. So you don't want to get into that. And it's one easy way to prevent that is to cultivate a culture where disruptions and diversions are welcome.
Hey,
And
Paul.
lastly, on this first one, and then I'll break so you can comment.
Okay.
Are you keeping a view toward the future of the organization, the DreamStream, and the tributaries? So everybody has a life. They're walking their own career path. Many job positions nowadays are training positions. Whether you call them a permanent employee or not, people are walking up a career ladder very fast. And so oftentimes your best people are going to be with you for a year or 2 or 3 at the most, because they're going to get cherry picked, especially in nonprofit work where we're working for half or a third of what people could be making in private sector with stock options and employee ownership plans and whatever. It's important that we recognize that people are people. They have whole lives. They have kids. They have spouses. They have aging parents. They have health issues. They have dreams and aspirations of their own. And so do you create a culture in which it's okay to be a whole person, and where people can talk about what their dreams and aspirations are? And maybe it's not appropriate to go very deeply into what people's dreams and aspirations are. If somebody is proselytizing for their spiritual practice, it's not appropriate in the workplace to do that. But it's important that you know that that's what really matters to them, and that you have private conversations that allow that to be okay. So I'll stop here and give you a chance to comment about what's the dream as the first of our 3 conversations today in the developmental quiz.
Well, one thing I've been thinking about is like all the different people who are involved and kind of where they fall. Like, who am I having the 7 questions conversations with?
Yeah.
Do they become people who I'm having the 3 conversations with? Or in like your volunteers. So right now I have like, 2 or 3, like 3 printers who love the shop and who have been working, with me really hard, and sometimes voluntary. And so, but then I also have people who come to the shop and who could be members. So I've been starting to think of this like membership idea. And then I have like staff, and then, then there's like, so like people who might fall into the partners or the board or the members, and then the clients. And like, I'm kind of like, wait, who am I having all these or agreements with? And I was just envisioning and kind of drawing up like a matrix where I could actually plot your questions, like conversations, like, is this someone I would have this conversation with? And like, where does that kind of fall out? And
let's invest some
simplify.
time during the VIP session in
Yeah.
delving into that a little deeply.
Yeah.
I want to kind of power on through here because we're almost over our first hour, and I want to just share with you the other 2 questions very briefly because they're important. The question, who am I, is essentially what you're asking.
Right.
So everybody has to
Role.
ask, who am I? This is the roles and responsibilities question. This is the governance and authority question. Are you clear about who promises what to whom? And my brief answer to your first question is, as few people as possible. Most of your conversations should be about screen printing and makerspace and being together and having food. These are planning conversations that are, as long as you have it clear in your own mind, that may be enough. Or you get one or two or three other people in on these conversations. And this is also, this who am I question is, how do we coordinate action to know you're picking up the shirts, you're picking up the food. When I coordinated the Humboldt Folklife Festival in 1995, the prior year they had 300 people. The year we did it, we had 5,000 people. And we had people doing recycling and somebody else doing the audio and somebody else doing the staging and somebody else doing the food and somebody else doing the vendor booths. You have to know who's doing what or stuff gets dropped out. And that's where list making is really valuable. And in the essential day-to-day conversation, does everybody commit to honor, respect, and maintain the pattern of authority? Do they know who's in charge? Do they know that when a decision has to be made, we honor that, not in a military sense or a slavery sense of, if you disobey me, I can kill you, but really to dispense with these conversations so that we know who's in charge. At one point, Planting Justice had $1 million grant from the county of Alameda, and one of the partners in the implementation stepped up and said, I'm in charge now. And Gavin Raiders had to say, no, you're not. This grant was given to Planting Justice. You're not in charge. That person eventually ended up leaving the project because they couldn't handle that they weren't the one in charge. So it's important to know that. And this question of knowing who gets to have which conversation, who writes the checks, who can make an agreement on behalf of the DreamStream, a contract that's binding. Very important to know who gets to have which conversation with regard to decisions, choices, assessments, requests, promises, innovations, all of that stuff. Once again, this doesn't have to be a big deal. It can be a 60-page, 100-page procedure manual. But as long as you're clear in your own mind, you can move forward. Then how do you maintain clarity and consistency with regard to granting, using, and organizing power and authority? Are you a living organization? Do you review this stuff from time to time? Then the last question that I want to share with you today, and this is just kind of a bonus, is how do I feel? What's the mood of this DreamStream? Do we have a sense of aspiration and possibility? Or are we resigned or grumpy or angry? You can feel it. You can feel it very quickly walking into a space, walking into a meeting. You can just, it's almost a psychic, non-physical sense of the mood. And so now moods are a predisposition to action. They're not just a private affair. The organization feels a particular way. And so having in place a way of addressing moods where you can welcome dissent in respectful and harmonious ways, and you give people permission to declare diversions and ask for time and attention and resources to address them. Anticipating and managing moods as part of your DreamStream process will distinguish your organization, your dream, from other organizations. And ultimately, this contributes to trust. Do we evoke and produce trust? Do people show up on time and do what they said they would do? Do they communicate effectively when they're not going to be there at an agreed time? How do we make trust a context within which we can produce, resolve, and recover? And when it's lost, what do we do? When trust starts to erode, how do we restore that trust? Do we have a system of restorative justice or restorative resolution in place so that we can help people recover their mood of aspiration and fulfillment on behalf of the DreamStream? So that's what I wanted to share with you today in terms of the 3 conversations that go beyond fundraising to the realization of a dream. And I will put a link to this in the LinkedIn group so that you can see this quiz. And it is my absolute favorite conversation in the world. You are welcome to call on me to have this conversation. And also, if you find something missing, if we haven't gotten to what you wanted to learn in the art of fundraising, please let me know. Let's set up a time to talk individually so that we can move forward together towards the realization of your shared dreams. And I'm going to finish this last of the 5 sessions with a song, as is my wont, because for me, that's a different mode of communication than just talking at you. And this is a song that I heard Holly Near sing a few years ago, and I believe it's a Lori Wyatt song. And some of the metaphors ring true for me. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. The stream sings it to the river sings it to the sea sings it to the boat that carries you and me. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. The ship we are sailing in was built by many hands. The sea we are sailing on touches many lands. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. So with our hearts we set our sails into the wind once more, and with our dreams we chart the course never sailed before. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me.
Lovely.
Thank you for sharing these 5 days with me. We'll segue now into our VIP session, and you'll be hearing from me about future offerings in the very near future.
Thanks. Peg, you're on